Hey guys, this is the Anythingers podcast with your host, Glass Bass and Casey Q, where we discuss, anything.
Hey guys, I'm Kelsey Q.
And I'm Glass Bass here.
Awesome. And today we're going to be discussing photography. I think Glass Bass, he's really into photography, and he kind of knows more about the subject than I do. But in the history kind of relevance thing, then we're just going to both be just learning about like photography and what it involves. But like, why don't you tell like the audience what you know as a photographer, Glass Bass?
Yeah, quote unquote. Let's see. Photography. Most people usually think of photography as just a thing they take for granted, and we're talking like smartphone photography. We're just talking like we're taking a picture. It's just tapping a button on the screen, and there you go. Ooh, there's your picture. And for most people, yeah, that's fine. Even I do it, but if you actually want to take like a quality picture that's beyond what your phone can do, then you don't really have much choice unless you upgrade to a dedicated camera, or in this case, basically either you get a mirrorless camera or a DSLR. There are two different types of camera. The technology that's involved is slightly different between the two, but in long story short, in these dedicated cameras, you basically get a larger center, which means you get more light. For every picture you take, you get much more light per megapixel, which means no matter how dark it gets, it won't become like a noisy mess. Like sometimes when you try taking a smartphone picture out in the middle of the night and you realize your phone being weird, yeah, it can't handle the lack of light in that regard. This is where
I do agree with you. If you do want to upgrade your specs in photography to just normal selfies pics, and like you could always upgrade to that so you can take more beautiful, more stunning pictures out in like the world or whatever. But for most people who depend on their phone and who are always on their phone, who have just your normal run of the mill like technology that you're on every day, a phone is something that is a little bit more accessible and less expensive than an actual camera. Because if you want like a DSLR, you're looking to spend thousands of dollars. They're not cheap.
They're not cheap. No. You can spend about, you have to at least spend $300 on a dedicated camera model that's not a compact camera, which nowadays, remember compact cameras? Remember pointing shoes? Because they don't remember those? Yeah, they used to be,
Yeah.
they used to be the cheap everyday people option until smartphone took over. So, yeah.
Wait, as compact cameras like disposable cameras, or what do you mean compact?
We're literally talking the really cheap like cameras you get for like $100 or $50. Like,
yeah, they were
those
called
kind
disposables.
or both. It's either both disposable film ones, but really I'm more talking on the really cheap dedicated model. We're talking like point and shoot. That's what I mean. The thing is, those point and shoot cameras, you don't really see them that much anymore because smartphone took over the point and shoot category, and even better in some aspect because of everything else that you get in a smartphone, like uploading to Wi-Fi, uploading to Facebook, uploading to Twitter or Discord or whatever. It's just that you basically get point and shoot quality from a smartphone, and then you're able to like upload it to everything you do, which is why point and shoot got out.
Going to be? I think that photography, where it's going right now, it's in the hands of every person on the planet. Not every person, but most of the population has a smartphone, and they have the means, and they have they have access to just about every kind of functionality when it involves like taking a picture. Like
For
it's in your pocket. You pull it out of your pocket, your purse, your pants, wherever you put your phone. It's all in your hands. Do people really need to spend more money on a nice expensive camera when
yes,
technology is getting to a point where, you know, putting a camera can just be on your phone? Everything is being accessed to your phone.
yes, I know.
So
I will argue one point. You need a niche. You need a specific. You need to know what you're doing to really know if you need a dedicated bigger camera, at least $300 minimum. Because let's say you're trying to take a picture of the moon. That's like the most obvious example where you realize that, yeah, my phone isn't gonna do that anytime soon, even with the fancy zoom lens. I
I
think,
mean, but with the technology now that we have, taking a picture of the moon doesn't seem that hard anymore, because even though, yeah, your phone can't do a lot of things, you know, but like taking a picture of the moon, it may not be as crisp as, say, your fancy technology, but like it could probably get to a point where, you know, you point to something that may have seemed impossible a couple years ago, and now it's just easy, you know.
yes, which is why dedicated photography became a lot more focused. It became a lot more niche. Like, you don't see wedding photographers using a smartphone. They use an actual dedicated camera because
No.
they need to get that. Like, say you have a bride kissing at a certain point, at a certain time, you need that autofocus on
Yeah.
target. You need to snap a picture as quick as possible. Smartphone's not going to do that. Only if you like actually know what you're doing, then yeah, you would know what aperture values are. You'll know what ISO values are. You have to know the length of your lenses and all that stuff. It's much more
I mean,
dedicated.
like something as beautiful and as memorable as a wedding, I would automatically assume that somebody who is an expert in photography would not be taking something on their smartphone, unless you're one of the people that went to the wedding and you just kind of want to snap a picture real quick. I mean, of course, you don't want to bring your big ass camera from home, you know. You want to leave
Yeah,
that at home, so you just snap a picture. But the person who is the photographer, that's different. That is different. You're snapping for, like, you're snapping a memory of something that could probably, that will never be like, that would never be like that's a one in a lifetime chance memory, you know. Like sometimes it's just like that one thing, you know, and it'll never happen just like that, so you want to keep that memory in, like, in case, you know. And to capture that, like, yeah, I totally get that part. But, you know, um I mean, I don't know what, you know, wedding photographers or magazine photographers use. Maybe some people use their smartphone. You know, I don't know.
there's a lot of niche where dedicated cameras still serve a role. Wedding is not just one example. Let's say wildlife photography. You're trying to shoot a bird. Good luck on a smartphone with that too, as they move fast in the sky and they're very far away, which means you often have to zoom up to them and often have the autofocus and often have the lighting in order to catch that. Oh yeah, trying to shoot a bird it requires much higher shutter speed than usual, and higher shutter speed requires more ISO, which it stacked upon. It basically stacks. It gets to the point
Mm.
where, anyway, long story short, photography, dedicated photography, is now more of a dedicated niche. You need to be doing, like, say, bird shooting. You need to be doing, like, say, wedding picture. You need to be doing something that demands more fidelity or detail or a better picture than what you would otherwise get from a smartphone. Smartphone is basically the jack of all trade, an easy option for most people. Even I will use my smartphone because it's smaller than my camera. Even I'll use it, but if if the smartphone camera can't do what I'm looking for, then I'll switch to the dedicated camera. But for most of the time, it will do the job just fine.
Yes. So I kind of want to move into talking about like your passion, your thing to like the history side of photography, where it came from, how it just kind of how it just kind of came into existence and how people started using it and how it just kind of manifested and evolved into what we know today as different forms. So I kind of wanted to talk about the first photographic process, which was heliography, and it was invented around 1824 by. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna butcher his name.
Yeah,
Nicefore
let me try.
Nispi.
N- n-
Nicefore Nispi. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna just
my turn,
like
my turn, my
butcher
turn.
his
Nice
shit.
for NSP. That,
Yeah, and
that was
this
probably
was
definitely not. That was not the pronunciation for right now. Right? It's just something else.
yeah no. So what this did was he obtained bitumen and juida and spread it on a silver plate after an exposure time of several days.
Yeah.
So
To keep that in mind, you people on your smartphone, you take a picture and it happens like instantly. This is like
so like
1824.
this so
This is
like this kind of photography, it's not like today where you just like everything's like digital, you just turn a couple dials. This like it was so much more complex then, and I'm not as in tuned and as well versed in photography, but like I did watch a couple documentaries, and like the first like actual like people taking pictures of like family, they couldn't smile, they couldn't move, they have to stay perfectly still or else it would fuck up the process of the actual thing. They have to remain there very very still. So like the first kind of photography, like
the exposure.
portraits.
The exposure time was like a minute or 2 minutes. They had to be still. Otherwise, like if they made that smile during the exposure, their face would look weird. It'd be like a blurry looking smile on your face because the exposure is still taking in the light in that 2 minute span of time. And if you make any movement or anything, you screw up how the light came to the film, so to speak.
Yeah.
Which is
So
why, which is why we speak in terms of exposure time, like in modern dedicated cameras and smartphone, they give you the option of having a shutter speed of like 1/20th of a second. That kind of, if you really want to get anything to be perfectly still no matter what, then you put on a shutter speed of say like 1/200th of a second, 1/50th of a second. That's the amount of exposure time you get. So basically faster size big means you don't have to move as much basically.
and yeah, like they also had where like the exposure time, it took more than about 30 minutes to actually expose the film, and it was done by different kinds of chemicals, like mercury, um, and
Mercury
different
poisonous,
things of
bro.
that.
Yeah, you better be going. You better be like you gotta know what you're doing with mercury. Don't let that
Dude,
crap get.
people used to use mercury as like skin moisturizer. They used to put it on their face and it was like, yeah, this is gonna make me look young.
Mercury vapors.
Mercury was
That's even
not
worse.
mercury vapor. I don't know about mercury vapors, but I know like mercury in general used to be like people used to put it on their skin and think it was gonna like make them young or fucking the elixir of life, and people used to drink it like it was deadly. It's you don't eat it, kids. Very bad, very very bad, very bad chemical.
Yeah, people. The same could be said of radiation back then. People just didn't know what the hell they were doing, and they were just doing it until someone died and more people died, and yeah.
And you also have the cameras that used to have like the little bulb in it, and then like whenever you take a picture, like you know what I'm talking about. I'm not what's that one called?
The bulb? You mean the flash?
The bulb camera. Yeah, like the bulb camera.
Yeah, that often produce a quick enough a flash of light. When you flash someone, that's basically making a lot of light in a very short amount of time, which can be exposed quickly. That's why they use flash. But you don't want to use like flash all the time though. But they use it a lot back then because just exposing otherwise wasn't enough light for the short exposure time that they had back then. So that's why you see back in like the 1930s and 1920s, you see flashes all over the place because they need that light and the short exposure time that they had to get a picture of, like, say, a celebrity walking down the staircase or some politician back then.
Mm-hmm.
Still true today, but not often because camera technology is so much better to the point where that's not required as much as it used to be.
Mm. But like you'd get a lot of these kind of flashing photographies like in the 20s and so like that where just like little light bulb and it go pop and then stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just that nowadays, actually, flash can still be used. It's not always meant for just giving you the light when you need it. You can use it in artistic factor, like say there's backfill, there's backlighting, there's rear sync. It really depends on how you direct the flash because it can make a picture look significantly different than it would be without flash. Like you can have flash shooting off from the side. You can have like radio, like basically they're flashes, but they're radio controlled, sync to the camera, mind you. So what you do is, if you want a certain look, if you want even lighting of a subject or a person, like say portrait, for example, you don't want that front heavy lighting on your face. It's way too, it's just not there. So what they do is they have a flash in the back, and sometimes they have a flash on the side. So when you take a picture, every one of them flashes at the same time, which give you even lighting, so to speak, when you need it.
Mm-hmm. So we had different forms of like different people. The first kind of photography, it was heliography, and it was invented in 1824. And then you had when Nicepi, sorry if I'm butchering his name. You had Deguerre, is that how you pronounce his name?
Judea.
Who
I can say Judea. I can say bitumen, but the name
Dudare,
is
is
a
that
different story.
the Guerre, whatever his Deguerre, he invented in 1938 was kind of he made his own form, the Deguerrean type. Like I've heard this, I've heard this term in Life is Strange, believe it or not, because the main character Max is very into photography, and she went to this really fancy school. If you play Life is Strange, you know what I'm talking about. But Max, she's really into photography, and she went to this fancy school called Blackwell Academy and took a bunch of like classes on photography. And one of the teachers there was also talking about the Didagrian Didagrian theory, like
Good
type,
God.
like photography.
That was interesting that you learned something from a video game. Life is strange.
Yeah, I mean, like, but like, Life is Strange, since like Max was really into photography, and like the whole game kind of like, so I'm not just talking about video games, people, but like the whole game kind of evolved on that like photographic kind of memory kind of thing. If it makes any sense, everything just seemed like a moving picture since it was just like a story kind of a novel game, like a visual novel kind of played out game. Everything just seemed like a moving picture. And the whole thing with Max and her being into photography and her like liking that aesthetic feel, it fit into the game, and it made it like better. Like she was always taking pictures. Everything was just photo-esque. It was just great. It was a great game.
Yeah, the game was generally based around her. Her. It was basically based around her photography and a sense. Yeah, I mean, she knows more about
It
more.
wasn't based solely on just the photography. it was based around like other different really complex deep meanings. I will not spoil the game for you. Go and play it if you haven't. But like it's focusing on different kinds of parts of life, growing up, loss, death, all that kind of shit. So yeah, but photography, it was just like one of the things, and the grand type photography is one term that I remembered in this video game.
Yeah, but that was just one example of where photography was used in a video game to a certain effect. There are other games that started using photography as an effect as well, just in a different
Yeah,
fashion.
I'm not saying that Life is Strange is the first one. I'm just saying when I played it, that was it was the term that we're talking about today, um, where I was familiar with, and I was like, oh, that just popped in my head. Not saying that it was the first game to touch on photography and all of its coolness. Not saying that. I know there's other games out there that would probably touch on it a little bit more in detail, or maybe just a little bit. Not saying it's the first one. Just saying it kind of just popped into my head just now since we're
Mm,
on the subject.
yeah, anyway, moving on. There was more to it than just Judea. There had to be more to that push.
Well, I was talking about the Degrayan type after the original person who made the first kind of photography, heliography. He made Degrayan type, which it was it was mainly chemical based, and like fixing was done by immersing the plate in seawater, since they use a silver plate for exposure, and they coat it with silver iodide iodide
Yeah, I died.
layer. Yeah, and then and then the image was formed during the exposure to light. So that's kind of how the fucking daguerreotype kind of process was made. And then you had the Hippolyte Bernard. He discovered the way to obtain positive images directly on paper. So the one sheet of a paper would be covered with silver chloride and was blackened by light, and then exposed in a camera, and it'd been sensitized to silver iodide, and the exposure time was from 30 minutes to 2 hours. So for the
The only
youngsters out there who are like, man, that's a hell of a long time to take a picture, they didn't have
to
freaking digital stuff. Like
yeah, yeah,
they were
yeah.
doing this purely on chemicals and light and shit like that.
To keep in mind, this process was entirely all chemicals. This wasn't nowadays. Well, if you think about it, nowadays
Well,
what
they
we
still
have,
have black rooms and stuff,
yeah, we're talking back and we're talking like basically back
red
then
rooms.
before, like there are two major ways of taking a picture and how it's formed. Now you see, all the pictures we're taking nowadays are based on centers, based on digital centers, where the actual center itself is made of silicon, which is fabbed out in a fab where they would spin out these huge wafers and then they cut them up, and that's how you get your wafer. But however, that's because they're all made in the same way that your computers are making from silicon, basically. But back in the day before that even occurred, everybody was using film. You would have to buy like rolls of different films. You have to put in the tape, and every time you take a picture, one frame is gone, and you're on to the next frame of film. And film itself is a much more evolved version of what she was talking about way back in the 1830s and 1840s. Basically, film itself reached its apex at that point. That it was a whole evolution to that, and then eventually someone figured out, oh, you can take pictures on a digital center, and that was a lot faster, and you didn't have to buy film. So that happened, and that's why we don't have film anymore.
And but like still people kind of still use film, even though it's a little bit more harder to find. And um, because film is not such a common thing that you can just find in Target or something. I'm assuming it'd be expensive to find film because it's not a common commodity anymore like it
It,
was
it's for
in
a
the old
reason,
days.
because film photography versus digital photography is like this. When you're taking pictures on film, you have to buy actual rolls. You only get like maybe 30 pictures within a roll. It depends on what size it is. You get 30 or you get 45, I'm not sure. But basically, that's all the pictures you can take. Once you go through that roll, you have to get it developed. You can't just like use it, take off the roll and look at it. Nah, it's a negative. It's an image version of what you just took that has to be developed. Take the roll, go to a black room and you expose it yourself, or you take it to a store and they will do the exposure for you. It was not even an instantaneous process. Actually, the closest thing that even instantaneous film wise is Polaroids. Remember Polaroids? Yeah, those.
Hmm. And so the last I want to I kind of want to move on to different types of photography. But then the last person who kind of made photography to where it got to the more it got more complex, not just using a silver plate and some water and a couple chemicals. William Henry Fax Talbot. He kind of when Daguerre, whatever his name was,
It
when he
beats me.
died, he kind of resumed Daguerre's like invention in making um, photography more chemically. He started making it. He resumed his research, and the beginning of 1834, and in 1841 he patented the calotype, and this was the first negative positive process that made it possible to multiply the same image by means of intermediate negative on silver chloride paper. So that's pretty cool.
Pretty cool, but we still have long exposure times and sticking still in the chair. But yeah, that was pretty cool way back then.
Yes. You
Uh,
still had to use a lot of like chemicals to like make sure that the picture and like the image was exposed, and making sure like the chemicals were well balanced and everything like that. But like you get these three men who kind of perfected the use of trying to make an image pop out as much as possible and all of that.
yeah, that was basically that's how they get it back then. All that extra effort and all that chemical they were using back then. Yeah, nowadays it's just we digital center on your camera. You just take the picture and all the processing is done on the phone or inside the camera, and there you go. There's your picture. It's all done digitally now. If it was done chemically back then, it's all done by digital one and zeros nowadays.
Hmm. So now I want to kind of go into different types of photography, because we kind of went briefly into the history and where it manifested. Now I want to kind of go into like different types of it, and just explain like what kind of different photography things are there. Like I said in the beginning, I'm not a photographer. Like you obviously have more knowledge on this area than I do, but like I can only go by what I know on just taking pictures from a phone, you know,
Yeah,
and that's it.
phones are pointing to for everyone. Now, if you're talking about like an actual AK camera, now, that's the thing. Technically speaking, if you're taking a picture on a phone, you're technically using what they call a prime lens, which means you only have one fish focal length. In this case, let's say you have a phone. They're generally taking at a fish focal length of roughly around 35 millimeters to 50 millimeters, and that's the angle of view of what the picture would be, and you only have one angle of view. So if you want to zoom onto something without using fake zoom on the phone, because all that does is cropping. You're cropping into image, not actually zooming. So if you're on a phone and you want to get closer to something, you have to move yourself over there. Now, to actually zoom on a dedicated camera, they do. They have to put in a lens onto a dedicated camera, and let's say, take for example, a 24 millimeter to 200 millimeter lens, for example. 24 millimeter will be considered a very wide image, which means you can take a picture of a whole room in one shot. Now, if you zoom it up with your hands, you have to put your hands on the lens and then rotate the barrel until the lens gets longer. What this does is it zooms into the image optically. It gets to the point where now you can take a picture of, like, say, a squirrel or a bird very far away, and that optical zoom, so there is no loss of quality in doing that compared to before, where it's actually more like taking a picture and then you're just cropping in afterward. This is actually the exact same image quality, you're optically zooming there instead.
So, as a photographer, what would you say would be your favorite type of photography?
Honestly, I would just go out to a park, then I would take a pictures of all the nature itself. And if you take it in such a way that the sunlight hits the flowers and hits the frame, there's a certain beauty to it that you can't just capture otherwise. Or if there's like a moon eclipse, that'd be like the best thing in the world to take a picture of. But the setup for that is incredibly obtuse, so to speak, especially in low light. Especially, okay, so this reminds me. I had my cameras. I had to go to my beach. I had to be out there. It was like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, very dark. Keep that in mind. And I have a lens that goes from like 50 millimeter, which is considered somewhat center wide. It goes all the way to 500 millimeter. We're talking like you can take a picture of a person on the other side of the beach, kind of picture. And the moon is effectively so far away that even when you went all the way out to 500 millimeter on that lens, when I set up with a tripod, when I set up with everything to stabilize the camera as much as possible, even then, the moon itself, it's only about like in the center of the picture. It's only about like 1/4 of the actual picture that was taken. The rest of it was like clouds and everything. And this is where the 42 megapixel of my camera comes into play. You can cropping a little bit, it becomes, say, 18 megapixel, but it still looks very detailed. And there you go, you have your whole moon image right there in the spot. And even then, it gets even more complicated than that. Now you're taking into account, you have to take the ISO into account, you have to take the shutter speed into account, you have to take the picture in RAW format, which means, actually, now that reminds me, raw taking a raw format picture is like what they do back in the day. Let's say a black room, a dark room. You know what I'm talking about, right? The dark room.
Mm-hmm.
It's the
Yeah.
same. It's the same. It's a digital version of it. A raw image. You cannot directly use a raw image like you can with a smartphone picture. You have to develop it through a program like, say, Lightroom or Capture One Pro. And what you do is you go into it and you modify the image until it comes out with the best way it can be. The shadows, the highlights, and the moons, and all that stuff. Which means the actual picture that you just took is not the best it can be. The raw image itself, no, it's not the best it can be. It can be so much better than that, because in the raw format itself, there's hidden details, there's hidden shadow details, there's hidden highlights, everything there. It's hidden. So,
Mm. So, what would be a type of photography? Because, like, when I when we when we're discussing photography, we kind of want to hit like everything and not just like the specs and how to use a camera and whether this and this and that. So, like, for the type of photography, it really sounds like you want to that you were that you're really interested in like nature photography and just like taking pictures of nature, would there be a type of photography out there that you would want to try that you've never done before?
Well, that was nature, by the way. But all that podcast I was playing was literally just to take a back pocketable picture of a moon I have with my own equipment now. If you're looking for something a little bit more casual, but still using a dedicated camera and everything, you would take, say, a prime 35 millimeter lens, and that would have an aperture value of, like, say, 1.2 or 1.4.
Well, when I'm talking about type of photography, I'm not talking about the type of camera. I'm talking about the type of it. So
Uh,
like
I would,
architectural photography,
I
fashion
would get into that.
photography, documentary
I'm
photography.
talking about street photography, of course, because when you go into the street photography, a lot of lens setup tend to sort of go into 35 millimeter primes, and they do that because you walk around the street and you see what people are doing, what's going around you at the street, and you take pictures of what street life is like. There's a reason there's a whole genre of pictures centered around street photography. It's just, everyday life on the street. Sometimes you get interesting perspective of people talking here, people selling hot dogs, that kind of thing. It's essentially you're taking a picture of everyday life, so to speak, in street photography.
So have you done street photography before?
In New York City,
And
yeah, yeah, you can do this in New York City, especially when you're walking around like Times
how
Square.
would you say that feeling is in taking pictures of cars and people talking and people selling hot dogs and people walking on the street? How would you say that would, like, how would you say that made you feel?
Mm, made me feel. It made me feel like
Yeah.
I was there. It made me feel like I actually went somewhere. I actually went to a place. It made me feel like I actually went to New York City. I was actually walking among these people, and that's why I took these pictures, so I can have a reminder of a memory I can permanently put onto a picture of what I did in New York City. Eh, Basically,
Nice.
yes. That
So, in our last couple of minutes, is there any points that you wanted to hit on with photography in general?
I always say if you're starting off with photography, start off simple. There's a whole knowledge of this whole realm of photography that if you really want to start off simple, I would just recommend starting with your smartphone first. Start simple, but you gotta keep it simple. Start off with
Yeah, or you could get like since they what are those things called with the you take it Polaroids. Polaroids are getting back into style because like they went out of style for a really long time, and now like they're in a lot of like hipster stores. You can find one on Amazon for about $100. Yeah, get a Polaroid camera, and
actually, yeah,
just
Jack. Actually, yeah, that's a good idea because with the problem with smartphones that they let you take pictures too easily to the point where you don't really understand how the process works. Which means if you get the thing that she mentioned, you have to take your time, which put you in the right
because
frame
I
frame of
still
mind.
don't know everything about my fart phone,
Hmm.
my fart phone, my smartphone. I still don't understand every single spec when it comes to the camera part of my smartphone. There's still a lot of things that I'm like, okay, what the fuck does this mean? What does that mean? Okay, I don't know what this means. So I have to ask you.
In other words,
So yeah.
you don't know what ISO means. You don't know what aperture means. You don't know
And
what raw
before I even
format
got
means.
the phone, I was yeah, and before I even got my smartphone, I was looking at different places, different kinds of interviews with people saying like how to use this certain spec on the Galaxy S9 and how this would compare to other smartphones, and I didn't really understand that jargon that they were talking about because I'm not a photographer, but it seemed pretty cool, seemed pretty interesting. And like one day I would like to understand what every spec on the actual fucking phone does, because I feel like that's a lot. That's what makes every like smartphone nowadays is you get a smartphone because you want to be cool, because it's in style, because everybody has a smartphone and it's so cool to have this smartphone. But then like the actual camera things, people don't just like, people are just getting the camera because like they heard it was a good camera, but do they know everything about the camera specs behind it just being a good camera? Do they know
I
like the
will.
aperture,
I
all this shit?
I will say this,
I don't.
however, if you feel like your picture, or you feel like you taking a picture, if you ever feel that you are limited by your smartphone, then yes, go ahead and go to dedicated photography. But in the meantime, smartphone photography is
just
fine.
start off just start off small if you really want to go get in more into photography. Like, we get it, not everybody can get like an expensive ass $1,000 fucking camera. That's asking a lot. If you do want to save money, get a job, and then like save that money and you can get whatever camera you want to, but just start off small. Use your
Then,
phone, get a
well,
Polaroid.
I will tell you my story of starting off small. I started with a flip camera. That's like a video recording brick. The only thing it did was record like 640p resolution video at 30. That's it. I'm not kidding. That thing was cheap and it recorded video. And even I was trying to take some sort of picture of it by like taking a video and then snapping a screenshot off of it. But yeah,
The
I
camera that I use, I didn't even think I had a camera. Like, I was just using like my phone. I was just using a shitty flip phone, and it had
I
a really shitty
I,
camera.
I know people may not know what a flip is, but that's like basically the video
Mhm.
version of a point and shoot back in the day, and that was my first
I
exposure.
remember those.
Yeah.
I remember those. I remember they were pretty out. They were pretty like in. They were pretty like in, what's it called? They were just really popular back then. I remember like everybody like, yeah, I got a flip camera, yeah, it's so cool, and like camcorders and all that shit. But any
Yeah,
last words?
it was usually Sony camcorders, if I recall back. Well, yeah, most people usually think of Sony when it comes to camcorders, if I recall. And
Yeah,
but like yeah, before smartphone had video recording capability, if you want to record a video, you get a flip. That was like
mm.
the easy video record option back then. But nowadays, our phones do so much to the point where it basically killed off dedicated products, so to speak, except for high end
Mm.
at this point.
So, any last words before we go on away?
I would say if you're going into photography, start off small, start off simple, start with your smartphone, start with the simplest thing you have until you feel like if you feel like you're being limited, then go on forums, go on sites, come to me, whatever. And you really want to learn the devil in the details about ISO aperture and all that. If you don't know what that means, there's a whole wealth of resources out there to learn what these mean. But until you get to that point, just keep practicing what you know, and then move on, and move
Yeah,
on, and move on.
practice your craft, and just like, whatever craft you have, just keep practicing at it. Keep, if you're into porn, if you're into writing or whatever, just keep practicing your craft, and know that there's a bunch of freaking resources out there for you guys. And especially when it comes to photography, because photography, getting into it might not be cheap, but if it's something you love, then you want to dedicate your time to it, and like actually, uphold, getting better quality stuff and shit, not just like a GoPro, but like, but
GoPro? Oh my
yeah.
god! Don't even get me started on GoPro. That used to be like the
we,
popular.
we're not going to get into what this, we're not going to get it. Maybe next time we got to go. we can't have another discussion on GoPro.
Another podcast for another
Maybe one
day.
day. And another day we will discuss GoPros. But for now, we're gonna be signing off, and we'll see you Wednesday, nerds. Bye.
Bye. We'll see you on Wednesday too.